Guys, how's it going? um, I hope you guys are following along, and there hasn't been any issues, because I don't see any comments, I don't see any questions. So if you run into any issues where you think that's stopping you from moving ahead, feel free to post some comments and I'm happy to help you out. And make sure to share it with your friends and family, whoever you think loves coding. Okay, in the last video we saw that we created this project page, but we would like to add new project now because there's no project, so it's showing us there's no project. So in this video we'll be creating the model window. So when we click this button, that's going to fire that model window, and that's going to give us an opportunity to add a new project. So we can see, we can add some projects, we can edit some projects. So basically we can run CRUD based tasks on the project's controller. So let's open up the our editor and open up resources, views, and pages. And then in the pages, what we're going to do is we're going to create a partial view. Now a partial view is basically that lets you use that view in multiple folders. And I'm going to create a new folder here called models. In that models, we're going to have a model window for creating a model, creating a new project, and also we're going to have a model window for creating, editing a project. So we're going to say, let's say create, and of course we're going to have another folder called edit, but we'll be creating it shortly. So in the edit, we're going to have 3 different model windows. The first one is going to be for the projects, and this is going to help us create a project. And of course we're going to need the same thing for the tasks and the subtasks, and the edit one is going to let us edit. Now how this works is we're using Ajax to post our the route parameters like the ID and the slug, and based upon that ID and slug, Laravel is going to run a database query. So that's why the create and edit models have to be different, because the edit model window has to send the route parameters, and then of course it's gonna populate the information in the window for us to be able to edit. Now how this works is basically we're gonna create a model. So BS, I'm just gonna use here the bootstrap model window, which is comes as a template, and you can go to bootstrap side and just copy paste this. And this is the button that's going to trigger the model window. We don't need this because we have in our projects home, we have a new project here, the anchor tag, that's going to trigger this, and we have given it a data dash toggle model and an ID of create project. So that's what we're going to be using here, the ID, which is going to be create projects. That's the ID we're using. And of course we can just give it a role for the search engine, but it's not required. And the next thing is the content. Now in here there is a header, there is body, and there's footer. Now in the header, we'll say, let's just, what we want to do here is basically we're going to call it the title, add a new project. And in the footer, basically we can say here, let's say, so we're going to be using a form. By using a form in the model window, we can send the data, post the data to the project's controller to be able to save in the database. So let's just call we're using Illuminate HTML for our forms, which gives us a nice form facade. So we're going to use that format, that service provider, and we have already configured that. I think that's what we did. So we have gone here and we have configured here. We haven't configured the service provider, so we're going to need to do that now. I think it's about time, because we're going to be using this. So make sure to require this library, Illuminate HTML. I think I mentioned in one of the previous videos, but if you didn't, make sure to do so. And the next thing we need is we need to import it. We need to configure in the service providers. So basically it's pretty simple. I guess you guys have used it multiple times. It's nothing new. All you have to do is paste this bit of code that says Illuminate HTML service provider. That's how the library is registered when the application is boot, at the boot time. And then we're going to provide a facade, and we'll be using HTML facade and form facade. So we can just give an alias here, and HTML facade and form facade, and that way we can register our service provider. Once we do that, and then we can access the form facade. And now how to use this is basically you call form facade, which is using plate templating, because this is all plain HTML, and you call form, and we're going to open a form. In the form, it's going to have basically an array. It takes an array. We're going to give a method. Now method is going to be post. You can capitalize, and then action is basically where you're posting this to. Project controller at store method. So we're sending it to store method because we want to store this information. So project controller at store action, and then we're going to give a little bit of bootstrap class. So class form horizontal, and that's it. We are all set for the form. And just do a little bit of indentation here, and then we're going to end the form. So we'll be ending in the footer. We'll just end here somewhere around here. So let's just say oh sorry, we have to escape this. So form, so that's how you escape it. And sorry, I forgot, we can use this format to escape these. Okay, that looks good. So I can end this here and bring it outside a little bit. That way it looks more aligned. And once the form is opened, and we give it this is the button, a closing in order to close this, and then we're going to add a new project. Now the body is going to be basically the same for the edit model window and the create model window. So we can use a partial here. In the edit window, the only thing that's different is it's going to send the ID of the project, and it's going to use put or patch method. That's the only thing that's different. Otherwise the body is going to be the same. So we can just delete this, and we're going to say include. So let's just create a partial. Let's just create a form folder, because we're going to be using some common here in the projects folder. We're going to say forms. In the forms, we can say basically they're going to be forms for basically creating and editing. You can use same forms if you like, but I like to create separate forms, because in the create form I can put a placeholder like create a project, and in the edit I can say edit a project. However, in the edit form the placeholder won't be visible because it'll pre-fill with the data. But let's just use for the create form first. So I'm going to say project.blade is a good name, project.blade, and let's just get rid of everything. Now here I'm going to call that pages, and dot projects dot forms dot project. So that's pages, projects, forms, and then project. Now as you notice, the color is slightly different because I think it doesn't exist, or it exists, but pages dot projects forms dot that's good. There's no problem with it. Now in our form, what we need is basically it's going to be a simple bootstrap forms. Basically, we need a div with a form group class. In this, we need a input group. The input group is where the button is the part of the input element. So div dot input group add on. So input group, and I'm gonna call it name, the title of the input group, and then here we're going to use this form that's going to have a text field, and that's going to be it's going to be called name, and it's going to have input of, you can say input of all, because if for some reason your form comes back, because we're going to be setting up some requests where all the validation will be done. If the validation fails, it's going to come back with the old input, whatever input we provide. So we're going to use input all name, and then we're going to provide an array that where we can give the ID or the placeholder and the class. So it's going to have a class of form control, and it's going to have placeholder, project name. That sounds good. So it's going to have a project name, placeholder, and form control as a class, and name, and then that. And then we're going to copy this and just paste it 3 times. So that's going to be called a description. This is going to be a text area because we're going to let them write some description, and it's going to be called description. The name is description, and input description, all description, and it's going to have a class form control. It's going to have placeholder project description. And of course, in addition to this, we have to specify more parameters like the rows and the columns, because it's a text area. So it's going to have rows, 3 is good, and it's going to have columns, and that's going to be 3 as well. Yes. And then the next thing is due date. So it's going to be due date, and then it's going to have a text. I'm going to call it due date because that's what we call it on our database table column, and then that's going to be due date as well, and it's going to have an ID. First, let's just call it due date. Now this date is basically, we are targeting this date to be used as jQuery date picker. See, the JavaScript file. So that library, the date picker library, we are firing off. So in order to do so, we have to give it an ID, because the CSS and JS that are supplied you on the GitHub has all these libraries set up for us for the front end side. We'll be working on mainly on the back end, but if you want, I can create another different series for the front end part. If you would like, just write down in the comment section. The ID we are using is the same as date picker. Now without these IDs, you won't be able to use those JavaScript files or CSS, because unless you create your own. So I'm using an ID of date picker, so use the same one, don't change it, because otherwise it won't work. And yeah, that's it for the project. And after we do that, maybe we should go back in the browser and see if it works. Just refresh it. It won't work right now because I haven't really included. So form is okay, the model window is fine, but we haven't used this model window in our home .plate file, because the model window has to be present in one of the views. So what we'll do is we'll include it in the bottom. We'll say actually we haven't finished this model window yet, because we have to create this couple of things more here. So So we have a new project with the form, and then in the footer we don't need this cross because we don't need this, and we're gonna give a tag instead of a button, because we're using Ajax to fire this, so we don't need button. On the button is going to submit, and the anchor tag is basically not submitting to anything. Yeah, and it has an ID that is also blank, and we can give it a class of btn, cn, and btn. There's another class we need to give, because what I did in the Ajax file is I used this class to fire all the buttons. So by using a class, you can fire any button as long as it has this class. But using an ID, you're gonna have to call separate IDs all the time. So I created a class called submit button, which is perfect, because we have edit button, we have add button, we have delete button. So all the buttons will have this class. So we're gonna use this class, and we're gonna call it let's just give it a font or some like so. So that's gonna just create that flash for us, and we'll give it a variable here, submit text button. And when we call this variable, we have to pass in this variable from our the home.plate. We're going to be passing this variable, and that's submit text button. So submit text button is, make sure it's in uppercase, submit, and T is uppercase and B is uppercase. And also we're going to be providing here with div for our notification whether the form has been submitted or not. So let's just say div dot success, and it's gonna have a little bit of margin, so let's give it a 20 pixel margin, and then it's gonna include, all it does is includes this partial file that's been supplied to us already. So errors dot errors, oops, I made a mistake there. So all it does is that, and I guess that's it, man. I mean, there's nothing else. So we have this div. I guess I made a mistake. I deleted that one. Now it's fine. Make sure the indentation is fine. Yeah, it's good. So we used a partial, we gave it a button, and this is wrong. We need to give an ampersand here, and n from close, and errors, and make sure you have the error folders, and with the error file make sure you have this, because that's what we are importing. It comes standard when you install a new Laravel application. Now this is all done. It has an ID of create projects. That's all good. Now we're gonna have to pass this variable. So what we'll do here is basically we'll import this form. So we'll call it include. So we'll be providing this projects.plate. You know, so models create projects. So go to pages, projects dot models, and then create project, and projects, and then it takes the array where you give that variable, and because we'll be using the same, sometimes we can use the same form, you know. So by using variables, you can call it edit, you can call it delete. So at the moment this is fine. So let's go back to the browser and then refresh it and see if it fires up the model window. And it does fire up the model window, and it looks pretty good to me. So in just a couple of seconds, couple of minutes, we are able to set up our window. Now if you click outside anywhere on the screen, it goes away. You can also make it go away from there, but if you try to post it here, it's going to be running like infinitely because it does not get any response. Let's take a look at the console. In the console, you'll notice that, and when I try to submit, it's trying to submit to the projects. Now there is no request. We haven't set up any request for validation. There's no data. We haven't set up our controller. The data is null. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next video. We'll be setting up our controller, we'll be setting up the request, and then even if there is no data, it's going to give us the error here, but it won't just keep doing this. So definitely that's a bug. As you can see, the date picker is already working, so try to get to this level, and the next video we'll be setting up our store method on this controller, and also we'll be setting up the request for the project for validation, and then we can hopefully create and store some projects. Thank you very much, and make sure to post some comments and how you're going with everything, because I would like to know, and hit some likes, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.